Um, Most of you probably already know who I am. I'm Jake, and the work that I do is uses like a lot of like raw foods and herbs to help people heal. And I'm wanting this talk today to be more on one society specifically, but going into some accounts of some pretty respected mathematicians and people from Greece that in the academic world we highly respect, accounting for other groups and societies that lived on raw foods or fruits and thrived for far longer than the average lifespan that we currently have sort of given to us. And it's very interesting. I did hear from this geneticist guy on some podcast saying that there's something called telomeres, which is sort of the extension of gene expression, essentially. And supposedly we're only using like 10% of that. And it's been shortened over generations. And there's a lot showing just cooking our food alone will shorten the telomere expression. It will shorten essentially lifespan. And if we can live in a Western world on medications and eating whatever we want and still live to 80, 90, sometimes 100 with a 10% telomere length, you sort of wonder what 20% could look like, or 50%, or what 100% could look like. And I'm going to start a little bit into the sort of the worlds of duality and sort of the world we live in here. With a lot of the information I'm sharing isn't exactly easy to find. There's a lot on the internet that tries to suppress certain information that doesn't really want this to come out. The society that I'll be discussing, the scriptures that were pulled out of the Vatican were pretty much omitted completely from biblical texts and a lot of other texts, and only just came out last century from an objective translator who just translated what he found. And it's very objective, non-ambiguous translations, like a child could understand them. And I think we live in a world nowadays where they're trying to make everything complicated, like makes things as wordy as they can be, make things really hard to comprehend. When I think, from my experience and what I've seen with clients heal from terminal conditions and regrow hair and get rid of viral loads like herpes and these kind of things, and we have all the proof for that, they still don't want to look at that, and how really the truth is actually quite simplistic in how we heal. And I think that you guys here will be able to see that as well. So I wanted to start with dualism. And there's always been a play of like good and evil essentially happening in our world for a long time. I would say majority of modern human history has been a lot of violence towards one another. There's been a lot of suppression of whether you're a female or a black person or a gay person, to suppress something because the powers that be don't like that. And we've seen that in history very recently. Not even 100 years ago, a gentleman almost, actually ashamed to call him a gentleman, a man almost wiped out an entire race, Hitler, right? So, and that was not long ago. And these are very evil things that are taking place and have been taking place. And we see this circulating in the way they wanted all the books burnt, the way they wanted certain information suppressed. We live in a world now where if you say the wrong thing, you can be thrown in prison in some countries if it doesn't match what the governments want you to say and want you to be speaking about. These are all very true things. There are countries that used to be very desirable that no longer are really the places to be anymore. Australia potentially could be one of those countries one day, probably soon, if things don't change. So I hope you guys can see the truths that are shared in this club. I'll be sharing a lot of sections from a book called the Essene Gospel of Peace, which is the best account of the Essene community. And this is the main community that showed what it was like to use raw foods, use herbs, and prayer, and what that actually means, and how that actually healed people. And there was nothing really magic about it, quote unquote. There was no like miracles being performed. You could say that it was miraculous, but when it said like the dead shall walk again, there will be people that are on death's door. And I've seen this firsthand, and through Dr. Morse, my mentor, where people literally look like dead people, and they'll in a wheelchair, and they'll literally walk again 12, 18 months later. And what actually you're using is nature to help you. And those of you that have been to my course or chatted with me, understanding what living foods does to the body versus cooked foods. And I'm hoping to show that through this talk, and how we've really had a twisting on our reality to try and force us down a road of spiritual stagnation, I believe, physical stagnation, and what that's resulted in is a deep ignorance in humanity, which I think is actually coming to the surface. People are starting to look at things differently and figure out, hey, I'm not getting better, or this isn't changing. So I wanted to begin with the dualism there, just to always recognize that these forces, yin and yang, if you will, there's a very extreme of these happening right now. And we just need to be very aware that I think a good question to ask is, if something is being promoted in the modern world, is that actually what is right? If what is being encouraged, is this actually what we actually need? And I would say no, the recent history has shown us that that's not the case. And the account of these people and the Essene communities shows an amazing account of a group that pretty much overcame any form of sickness, spiritual and physical. And this is where sort of, there's some shows that have come out recently on ancient civilizations, and there's a guy, Graham Hancock, who's done some documentaries on looking objectively at ancient remains of ancient sites, and pretty much showing that there's this huge period of time that we've just completely ignored, and that modern archaeology is not acknowledging that there clearly was a more sophisticated, more intelligent race of people, a global civilization supposedly, that wasn't just these basic dumb hunter-gatherers that all of a sudden just started to farm, and that the evolution of humanity wasn't actually as it's been taught to us. And I would say that these cultures of living foods, and I'll show in the next slides, based on some Greek historians literally stating that there were people that lived for hundreds of years, generally around 200 to 300, some even accounting for more than 400 years, on literally fruits and on herbs, and some even just on herbs and fasting. And these were thousands of years of generations that all of a sudden just don't exist. We don't hear about that anymore. That's all gone. And I think the fact of the recent documentary, I'm referring to Ancient Aliens specifically, but also Graham Hancock's books, there's so much left in the really what happened to humanity, and that really is what we are taught actually how humans developed. And I would say that theory of evolution, which again is a theory, is quite flawed in how humanity really changed, and how as soon as we discovered fire, we could cook food, and that's how our brains grew. When in my world, you see someone eat cooked food, their brain deteriorates, you give them living food, their neurological power increases, and they can get out of a wheelchair. And this is, as we'll show soon, this is essentially what Jesus was doing back before it was, more popular. All right, so there's a few quotes here from, you probably heard of these guys, Herodotus, Hesiod, and Plutarch. And these are just some statements they made in their poems, in their writings, about people that lived on fruits. So the oldest inhabitants of Greeks, the Pelasgians, I highly encourage you to research the Pelasgians. By the way, these are like the Pelasgians, this means like the original Greeks, essentially, who came before the Dorian and Ionian migrations, inhabited Arcadia and Thessaly, possessing the island of Lesbos. There was another island, but I couldn't find it. Maybe it doesn't exist anymore, which was full of orange groves. The people, with their diet of dates and oranges, lived on average of more than 200 years. The Pelasgians and the people who came after them in Greece ate fruits of the virgin forest and blackberries of the fields. The ancient Greeks, before the time of Lycurgus, ate nothing but fruits. Just so you know, Lycurgus, he pretty much came from Rome and just tried to obliterate everything that was being done in Greece. The same way, during the times of Jesus, there was a guy called Constantine, and he pretty much wiped out the Essenes almost completely, rewrote with the New Testament, pretty much said you can have as many wives as you want, eat and drink, live slothfully, abuse, doesn't really matter what you do, have slaves, not a problem, and that's all good. And that's Christian, is what they would call that. But I'm not going to go into arguing Christian or non-Christian, but what I will say is that it's interesting that these bigger powers come in and just try to wipe the slate clean with what they want, and just to do whatever they want and do what they please. And I don't know if any of you guys at school, we studied Plutarch, we had Hesiod at school and Herodotus. I never heard about these quotes. It's very interesting how you don't hear about these things at school. Even Leonardo da Vinci says that humanity pretty much can't evolve as long as we're abusing animals. Nikola Tesla said that until we actually embrace true spirituality, then modern science will never actually develop any further, because if we refuse to acknowledge something that isn't visible to the eye, they say it doesn't exist. And the best analogy I heard is a worm doesn't have eyes to perceive light. Does that mean light doesn't exist or color doesn't exist? No, they doesn't have the perception to perceive it. But in science now, they've managed to give eyes to worms, and now they can perceive light. And it's like, that's messed up, but also it shows that just because you can't see it does not mean that it doesn't exist. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. The ancient Greeks before the time of Lycurgus ate nothing but fruits, and each generation reached the age of 200 years. I'm just showing a few more examples here, and Herodotus even referring to the Egyptians subsisted on fruits and vegetables which they ate raw. And it's funny because we have a lot of like ancient grains in Australia sold in breads. Like there's one called karasun and kamut, which are like ancient Egyptian grains, but they're always promoted as being cooked. And often they've been fermented or sprouted, but then they've cooked them. There's only one brand in Australia that sells pure sprouted bread that's been heated, I think, at like 65 Celsius. And it's interesting how there's this warping again of really the last things recommended today is like raw food, or specifically fruits. You know, people compare like fruits with Coca-Cola, or they will say like, oh, the sugar's the problem, not understanding that sugar in Coca-Cola is chemically completely different to the sugar found in fruit. And any of you know of, one moment, anyone know of Sadhguru, the Indian guy on YouTube? He's pretty popular. He spoke about a friend of his who was like in debilitating health. This is on YouTube. And there's testimonies like this from Dr. Morse as well. This lady went and lived on oranges for a year. And he said he saw her a year later, and he's like, she looked like a kid almost, like 20, 30 years younger. And he's like, I'm not saying you should go and eat fruits. And he's sort of chuckling to himself, kind of going, maybe you should just eat oranges for a year. And my mentor, Dr. Morse, lived on oranges for 6 months. People do like mono grape fasting, mono mango fasting. And really what that is it's the transition towards nothing. Fruits are the transition towards nothing. Herbs are the transition towards nothing. Raw foods even are the transitions towards nothing. And the moment you stop obstructing the body, we start to see the human body repair at a great rate. It's only that we're getting in the way of nature doing her job properly by obstructing the flow of energy all the time. Sorry, your question.
On the bread, what's the one bread that
Pure. I believe it's called Pure Land, or it's at Flannery's. No, it's at Flannery's in the fridge aisle. Yeah. It's in the brick. Yeah. I actually emailed them and asked them, is it technically raw? And they said some raw foodists will say no, because some say over 55 is cooking, some say over 70 is cooking. It's about 65 to 70, but there's still enzymes in it, and that technically is what regards it being raw, is that the enzymes, or the life force, the enzymes are still alive. It's one piece is so filling. Like you compare it to something like Wonder White or something like that. Okay, before I go into some of the definitions and some of the texts from the Essene Gospel of Peace here, I wanted to just define a few things before we get stuck in. It's a smaller group, so I think it's going to be easier to get you guys on the same page here, but there's often words Satan and God used. Obviously, I can't read the whole book to you because it's going to take way too long, but when that is being referred, when Jesus in the Essene Gospel of Peace is teaching the people that are sick, Satan is referred to in many different forms, in the form of a thought, in the form of an action, in the form of something that you've done wrong to your body. Because really, that is etymologically what it actually means. It's not some evil dude hanging out trying to spike you or whatever is happening. It's that these are negative actions against you. And I think humans have taken things too literally. The same way here, the translation of God in Taoism literally means the way. In the translation of the Chinese version of the Bible is, in the beginning was the Tao, and the Tao was with God, and the Tao was God. But and it's also funny because the way also means the word, but it's also Taoism means the way of life, or the way things are. And I think coming into, as I will read some of the texts and going into the Essene group specifically, is often we put our own preconditioned mind onto things, and it stops us from getting in the way of seeing things as they are. So when you see a statement like the law of nature or the reality or something like this, that can be quite threatening to a construct you may have in your mind. Because if there's something that you've created and it may not be true, but you're holding so dearly onto it, and something else comes in and says, actually, maybe that's complete falseness, then sometimes we can try to hold on to that and get angry or whatever. And I know from experience. And I think laws of nature can't really be argued with. You know, no one's going to argue that fire doesn't burn and ice doesn't freeze. Like, these are just objective laws of nature that have always existed, and it has to be this way. Yin and yang have to exist in order for anything to function. My mentor, Dr. Moore, said if everything was pure alkalinity or the feminine energy, it would just be a liquid planet completely. There'll be nothing really that solid, because women are much more fluid and soft and giving and nurturing, and very acidic or very masculine is hard, corrosive, this kind of stuff. And I want to fix stuff, I want to hit stuff, blah, 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 blah. And that's like the extreme of the other side. So it's like the balance of the two. And really you could say that Satan could be translated to the extreme of negativity, and you could say that God is like the balance of both in harmony together, because it's the way that things are meant to be, not that we don't have one and not the other, that they coexist in a balance. All right. So yeah, as I mentioned, the Essene community is really what I'm going to be focusing on here, and sort of how they came about. It's also said that Pythagoras was a fruitarian philosopher. I was just speaking with Josh out there, who's researched a ton into this. And also Pythagoras was like a mad boxer as well, according to Josh, which makes sense because the Greeks were always doing like wrestling and Olympics and things like this. So they would have been very into their physical feats. And anyone that has done research into high fruitarian people, they're very athletic, very strong, a lot of energy. And people often wonder, oh, can I build muscle? Can I be strong? It's like, yeah, most definitely. Just go on Instagram and you'll find plenty of people there. All right, so this is a little summary from not the guy that translated the Essene Gospel of Peace, but someone that put the PDF version online. The PDF version is free, which is awesome. And he said, the Essene Gospel of Peace is an ancient manuscript found in the Vatican Library. It was a wonderful document of Jesus' teaching about how to live in harmony with the laws of nature. I think you will enjoy it immensely. We can't help but wonder what other Dead Sea Scrolls lie hidden in the Vatican vaults that were missed in olden times when the Bible was compiled. It is interesting that many of the statements in the Essene Gospel of Peace are selected in different Bibles from different cultures. It's interesting how a lot of translations of very similar things, there'll be a few scriptures in here, texts that are very similar to that of the verse we sing at the temple in Sanskrit about overcoming bodily desire, and about not giving in to negative forces, or Satan, as Jesus puts it, the negative forces that want to pull you away from your oneness, essentially. And how it's interesting that these were just, no, we don't want that, we'll have that, and how you have the Old Testament, which has still got its odd things happening, but there's a beautiful thing in here that Jesus writes, which is he pretty much says, get all scriptures and bin them, which is beautiful, because people rely heavily on reading scriptures to the end of their days and all these kind of things. And the way he puts it is beautiful. And as written here, it was translated from ancient Aramaic and Hebrew texts. So the guy that translated this, it's on I forgot the name of the author, I think it's a French guy. He was not biased to fruitarian living or anything like this. He was just a scholar in Aramaic and Hebrew texts, and he translated it. So any of you that want to read the book, and I've also recommended some books expounding upon the Essene communities at the end of this that I highly encourage you guys to get, all of which are actually on Audible, which is amazing. I like listening to these. The narrator is really good. I sort of touched on that before, the miracles or magic. When they said like the dead shall walk again, the blind will see again, these kind of things. Nowadays, if someone talks about Jesus or the times of Jesus, he performed miracles, and even when I say to someone, hey, you could get out of a wheelchair, or you could get rid of that tumor, you could actually get your eyesight back, and they just go, no way I can do that. And you go, yeah, no way you could under what you're currently doing, because you're eating KFC, drinking coffee, eating Tim Tams, and doing whatever the heck you want. But really, there are laws that you can't ignore. And Jesus does state, if you turn away from the earthly mother, you will literally live in hell, essentially. And you can create that right now. You can create heaven or hell in your own body, in the world you live in, through your action, through how you treat your body and how you treat others, and how that self-feeds. And how it's interesting that we have interpreted that as somewhere we go after, this magical place or whatever, and that what you do here what you do right now doesn't really matter, and well, you could just go to a church and pray and you'll be forgiven and all good. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. This is literally cause and effect, or you reap what you sow, as it was put in the Bible. What goes around comes around. This is karma in action, and anyone that understands like Buddhism, that's the same thing again, the same concept repeated in different words. I was trying to make some connections here. All right, so who were the Essenes? So as I said, even the guy Jesus was that was a Roman word made up, a name, because really it could have been a guy called Appolonius of Tyan. It could have been, there's a book that I recommend at the end, who was supposedly actually this person. The word, actually his name would have been Yeshai Bech Halakme, and that was a very common name anyway. It's like John. It's like someone called Jesus could be Susan over there, like Mary. You know, these are common names. And there's so many different accounts of the person, but really I think we should get the essence of what this community was doing, not specifically one person. Because if he was just a representative of a group, which I believe he was, and based on what I'm going to share with you, I think it's very true, that this is just humans, again, focusing too much on one thing. And it's funny when people say that Jesus was a share of love and peace, but he slaughtered baby lambs at Passover. And lambs are like the most cutest, innocent little things, little baby sheep, and he's there slitting the throats of sheep over Passover. Like, come on. And this is what the church really did after they pretty much crucified the original Christians, or the Essenes, and pretty much recreated what now we have as today as modern, westernized, in a sense, Christianity. Romanized, I would say, would probably be a better way to put it. So they shared land and belongings with each other, a true community. So they were known as communists. The Roman Empire hated them because true communism, it sounds messed up now, because when you have a power at B in a communistly driven country, it's chaos. But if you have true communism or true community, you actually have everything working as an interconnected net, like wheels on a clock. But this, of course, takes people on the same page. And generally, I've been in some communities in Ecuador where they thought people were on the same page. One guy, his ego goes to his head, wants to control this, and it's like things don't work anymore. And I think these people really nailed it. There's a book there called The Secret Life of the Essenes, which I'll show at the end. And the writer has gotten all the different unrelated texts showing the same story, the same writings about these Essene communities and how they lived and how they had no money. Anything excess they had, they gave to the poor. They traveled and taught how to heal. They never demanded anything in return. They shared, they grew, they spent all their days laboring in the land. In the Essene Gospel, it is said if you sleep when the sun is high and you're up when the moon is up, you're literally doing the opposite of what the laws of nature are asking of you, and that is to commune with nature. Be at one with nature is really what commune means. And it's interesting how community, it's like interweaving. So as I said, they labored all day growing herbs, fruits, and vegetables. They were known to eat in silence and at noontime, so when the sun is highest in the sky. They were also known to, the original, like they would dehydrate foods. They'll know the seasons would change. This community was in the region of what's known as Palestine. And can be very dry, can be very cold at times, can also be very hot. So they grew grapes, figs, dates, had oranges. So they would dehydrate grapes in the sun. Or as Jesus puts it, they would use the angel of sunlight to bring the energy of the sunlight into the grape and preserve it for when the grape is no longer obtainable during the season when the grape is no longer available. And I'll get into more of that later on. They only married when it was right and did not have casual relationships. There are some accounts that there was supposedly an only male community. I don't think that makes any sense, and the other scriptures on this that I'd seen don't show that at all. But there were a lot of men that came like maimed and broken and abused, and also women as well. And it was almost like a place of refuge where those that were maybe rejects from society were didn't like where the modern world was going, and to come and join, there was like a probation period where they had to show that they could live in this community without breaking the conduct, essentially. It wasn't really a cult. It was more that this is how nature works. This is how we live. You can come and join us, but you need to follow in this way. And they never had, and according to Dr. Raymond Bernard, who wrote the books compiling this information, there was no recorded events of people stealing things, and because why would you steal if everything is shared in equalness? Like there'd be no desire for the concept of capitalism would not exist. There would be no idea of I need to get one up on you. I need to get one up on you because everyone's at nature, enjoying, growing the food, sharing the grapes, sharing the herbs, singing. And something I didn't write here as well is they were known not to dance very much, and the reason being is that it was taught that moving the body in more sexual ways invigorated a sexual desire that pulled them away from the oneness. Not saying that sex is bad, but when you look at clubs, when you have certain music and the way your body moves versus a spiritual dance, where it changes, and how that they wouldn't focus on that, rather on singing, because cultures that were known to do more like more primitive cultures that would do more like the caveman dancing and these sort of things were much more like rape cultures and, just orgies and these kind of things. And these guys were not about that. They were about preserving life energy, and it was about only using your seed when necessary. So semen retention, energy retention in all forms, male and female, like this is sacred. Even Jesus referred to it as like the golden oil. Like this is a life seed that can essentially, without getting too much detail, one male ejaculation could populate multiple states in America. So think about the amount of creative force in that is ultimately not being preserved. And we do live in a world right now where they encourage you to almost waste your seed endlessly. And a lot more people, men specifically, are starting to practice semen retention, which is you can still be intimate with your partner, but you don't have to waste your seed every day, every other day, every week, whatever it may be, and be drained. And anyone knows that if you have an orgasm, you're not really going to have a good workout. So just think about how much energy you're draining if that's what's happening. And it's very common in bodybuilding. Like usually it's men in the bodybuilding, not all the time, but the wives usually have to go without because the guys are like, nah, I need all the energy. They sang songs and gave thanks to the earth and the heavens. The Essene Gospel of Peace is in 4 books. The last 3 books is essentially kirtan. It's song, it's prayer, it's giving thanks. It's majority of the last 3 books. The first book is essentially how to live, the laws that are here in nature, and I'm going to get into what they are, and literally taken straight from the Essene Gospel. They also did a lot of studying of astronomy, herbalism, and of course fasting. So they were extremely knowledgeable in the study of the sky, and Pythagoras, as we know, was pretty versed in this, along with the other Greeks mentioned before. They would wander and teach and heal the sick. They ate only raw foods, herbs, vegetables, and wore no animal skin or wool. It's interesting, in one of the books by Dr. Raymond Bernard, it was the one about Appolonius of Tyan, who was about his travels over through India and then back through the Middle East. And he made a comment about, the guy said, why aren't you wearing wool? Why aren't you wearing leather? And he just said, why would I wear the skin of my friends when I'm friends with them, I can sleep with them and we can keep each other warm, like in the fields? I thought that was so sweet. And you see some original paintings of like Jesus with like the lamb around his neck, or they're cuddling each other. And the same here, when you go hang out with the cows, they'll come and cuddle with you. So if you are at peace and in harmony with nature, they will commune with you. You're in the cold, love will find its way. You'll be sitting together and you'll be warm. You don't need to, I'm going to skin you now and I'm going to wear your skin. That's just weird. So I love that. They sang songs and rejoiced in the gift of life. Again, the last 3 books have all those songs in there. I'll also go, I won't say that yet. It's a good surprise. Every 7th day they would fast. So Sunday used to be known as the Sabbath day. And we now live in a very gluttonous world, eat 3 times a day. In the Essene Gospel, Jesus says only eat really once a day. Eat when the sun is highest in the sky, otherwise commune with Mother Earth, or the earthly mother, as how it's translated. And this Sabbath day is a sacred day. It's a day of sanctity where you are alone. You don't have anything coming into your body, and you should go by yourself in nature and learn from nature. Nature is where the answers lie. These cows don't need to go to university, they don't need to learn anything. And I think when I read this book, I don't need someone to try and convince me. You feel something. You feel there's something being triggered in you that isn't, there's parts of you go, I don't really want that to be true because all these other things are nice. But then when you actually really want to find the truth of something, it allows to move. You allow it to move through in a way that moves you in a very profound manner. And I think many of you will be able to sense that in some of the texts coming up. And supposedly they learned from the Brahmins in the Himalayas, supposedly from a man called Krishna, which actually translates to Christ from Sanskrit, which is pretty interesting. Tried having a discussion with someone here about that. Didn't go too well. But it is interesting that the Brahmin societies, funnily enough, in the Himalayas, very private, very secretive. No one really knows where they've gone to. They're still there to a degree now. But it is interesting that we do live now with a lot of scriptures. Like if you read the Vedic texts, you'll never get through them in your lifetime. This is not enough. And I love in the book The Alchemist, if anyone's read it, by Paulo Coelho, he says the truth is so simple it can be written on a pebble from the river. And anyone seen Kung Fu Panda? You know when he's like trying to get that scroll? And then one wants to read the scroll and he ends up getting it and it's blank. And he's like, the secret of everything is in the scroll. And it's just a little mirror. And he's like, God damn it, I was expecting like these magic things. And it's just, it makes you laugh because there is no magic secret of you got to read all this or do this for the rest of you. You got to read all these books and devote yourself to this person or whatever and blah, 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 blah. The thing that really I think we should devote ourselves to is where we're from, and that is nature. And that is essentially what Jesus is encouraging people to do through his text here, through what he's taught. So this is the prayer of the earthly mother. Has anyone heard the main one? Our Father, thou art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Our Father, one. The Our Father prayer from the Bible. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. This is the one we always hear. This is the male one. We never hear the earthly mother one. And the earthly mother, the earthly mother one is sung in the morning, and the heavenly Father one is sung at night. This is what the Essenes did. And I wanted to put the earthly mother one because, again, even look at the meat and dairy industry. It is predominantly a female abusive industry. Females have been abused almost from the dawn of time, you know. And it's interesting how, again, the scriptures have often been translated by men. You have the isolation of what is pure. Even look in some of the paintings of Jesus. You have Jesus with a lamb. What is the lamb a symbol of? Purity, innocence, untainted truth, essentially, you could say, in a little animal. And in the earthly mother, no one knows about this one. And it goes, Our mother which art upon earth, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, and thy will be done on us as it is in thee. As thou sendest every day thy angels, send them to us also. Forgive us our sins, as we atone all our sins against thee. And lead us not into sickness, but deliver us from all evil. For thine is the earth, the body, and the health. Amen. And that last part, and even about the angels, this is hinting at everything that Jesus taught. He teaches about the different angels that nature has to offer. They're always there to help us. Sunlight, air, water, I'll get into these. And what these forces are trying to do, they're always there. Like, you know, you could be the most troublesome child, and your mum's always going to love you and be there. And like almost waiting. It's like, oh, they're going to get it. And then you eventually come round. And the amount of references that Jesus has in the Essene Gospel to your mother will never turn away. But if you turn away from her, you will feel the consequence of that. And you could kill yourself. You could go into a horrible mess emotionally, spiritually, and of course physically. But at the end of the day, your body has to go back from where it came, and that is essentially from Mother Earth. And Jesus again teaches that there is no greater mother than the mother that bore all. And a lot of people say like that blood is thicker than water. And in the Essene Gospel, it's encouraging you to realize that ultimately what is thicker than all of that is the blood of the earthly mother, the streams of the river, the ocean water, You know, you could have someone that's in your family that doesn't serve you that very well. You might be thinking, oh, they're family, but if they make you feel like a terrible human, they talk down to you, they beat you, they abuse you, really find the courage to walk away. And that is what Jesus is saying. It's like, walk away, come with us, because we will help spread the word of truth through all humanity so people can be at peace and the world can be at peace. And yeah, I love this earthly mother quote. It's absolutely beautiful. So yeah, teachings from the Essene Gospel of Peace. These are literally the words translated from ancient Aramaic into English. And I just want to start with sort of the first main ones. And I'll get into some more lengthier ones coming up. Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. This is this has been translated into many different Bibles from different cultures have this, but in our King James Bible, this is there. Interesting, the following isn't. And the flesh of slain beasts in his body will become his own tomb. For I tell you truly, he who kills himself, and whoso eats the flesh of slain beasts eats of the body of death. These can be very harsh words, but you go and look at a cow out there, and you were to like ask yourself, I'm going to go and find a way to slaughter this animal, then I'm going to harvest the meat from this animal, I'm going to try and get something from someone, I'm going to abuse something innocent, and somehow that's justified as being right. And he's essentially saying, no, that is of course not it at all. For I tell you truly, live only by the fire of life, and prepare not your foods with the fire of death, which kills your foods, your bodies, and your souls also. There's a further expansion upon what he says there about the fire of life versus the fire of death, meaning like fire that's cooking food. And this is where he pretty much says, throw scriptures out the door. Seek not the law in your scriptures, for the law is life, whereas the scripture is dead. I just love that. It's a little one-liner, and because they're like, oh, what about the teachings of Moses or teachings of blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, oh, come on, it's there in nature. Go and fast alone is really what he's encouraging us to get to, is spend time alone. And how hard is it to be alone? You feel a bit uncomfortable, eat food. You feel uncomfortable, you watch something. You feel uncomfortable, you spend time with someone. Oh, I need to be comforted. How is it to be comforted by nature? It's full on. It can be very uncomfortable. It can be overwhelming. You want to cry, you want to scream, you want to hit things. There's a great guy on YouTube called Dan McDonald. He's had his YouTube channel removed a few times. He speaks a little bit too much, using the wrong word phrasing that algorithm doesn't like. And he just did a documentary on his YouTube channel documenting a 40-day water fast that he prepared, I think, 15 or 20 years to do. And he also did a wilderness fast where he did 10 days fasting on a glacier mount in I think it's Montana or somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in the US, in the mountain regions. And he said every day was hell except for the 10th day. And he said he's like I was repenting for all the sins, all the negative things I've done, because you will be faced with them again. You can't not be faced with them again. Cause and effect. You can't put something in, whether it's an emotional, physical, even a thought towards someone that's negative. You've created something that has to live that pattern out towards you. You've involved yourself in that. So it's more like, when are you going to begin letting that process happen? And fasting, as Jesus shows, is essentially the way to that. All right, and this is the part about the living foods. But I do say to you, kill neither men nor beasts, nor yet the food which goes into your mouth. For if you eat living food, the same will quicken you. But if you kill your food, the dead food will kill you also. For life comes only from life, and from death comes always death. For everything which kills your foods kills your bodies also, and everything which kills your bodies kills your souls also. And your bodies become what your foods are, even as your spirits likewise become what your thoughts are. Therefore, eat not anything which fire or frost or water has destroyed, for burnt, frozen, or rotted foods will burn, freeze, or rot your body also. I can't imagine the guy translating this would have really had much to do, because it's pretty non-ambiguous writing that's not hard to understand. It's interesting how a lot of translations now, they use very wordy, strange phrasing, and this almost is like too simple in a sense. And it's interesting that the killing, thou shalt not kill, is pretty much ended in what most people understand of that expression. And how really the expansion of what was taught here was that extends to you killing other people, you killing animals, and the food that you eat. Because, again, life is everywhere, not just the plants are living and all of that. And yeah, that's a beautiful account of really what will happen to your body. And we've seen that there's a study called the Pottinger's cat experiment, feeding cats the same food, one raw, one cooked, 2 generations of the cooked food, same food but cooked, still the same food. They degenerated very quickly. Their teeth broke, their skin, their fur was horrible, their eyes, all this stuff. Their skeletal systems became soft. The raw food cats took 1.5 generations to regenerate. And also the sexuality of the animals became perverted. The women became aggressive, the men became docile. These odd things started to happen in the cat's behavior. This is all heavily documented on a YouTube video and on medical journals. It was an accident that they did this experiment, horrible things that they did anyway, but it's just showing again raw food versus cooked food. Even though it's the same thing, just the cooking, how that denatures the food. We've also seen that with Dr. Morse with clients in wheelchairs. He had a lady, he's got this on video. He got her out of a wheelchair on fruits. She was skin and bone, because you will get as skinny, you'll only get as skinny as how weak your body is. So if your body is very weak, you will shed a lot. And he was like, before understanding fruits, I'm going to put you on green drinks, because greens build. Like, I'm going to use alfalfa juice and all this. And she got back in a wheelchair a few days later. And her husband was like, what's going on, doctor? Like, the heck? She's in a wheelchair again and she's not speaking anymore. And just that alone was enough to put her back into the wheelchair, over just showing the energetic difference between complex greens versus the energetics of fruits specifically. And interesting, greens aren't actually a herb-bearing seed. Herbs are. Lettuce, we pick the leaf. We're not having the seed of. The seed of is essentially the reproductive organs of that food. So sprouted wheat, barley, these are herb-bearing seeds. Jesus has recipes in the Essene Gospel of Peace, how to make raw bread, how to dehydrate foods, how to preserve foods without killing them. He's literally got a how-to guide, which is amazing. So it is interesting that a lot of these things aren't actually part of that criteria of a herb-bearing seed. All right. It is the fire which blazes outside your body, which is hotter than your blood. This is him talking about how fire destroys. With that fire of death you cook your foods in your homes and in your fields. I tell you truly, it is the same fire which destroys your foods in your bodies, even as the fire of malice which ravages your thoughts, ravages your spirits. For your body is that which you eat, and your spirit is that which you think. Eat nothing, therefore, which a stronger fire than the fire of life has killed. Wherefore, prepare and eat all your fruits, eat all the fruits of the trees, and all the grasses of the fields, for all these are fed and ripened by the fire of life. All are the gift of the angels of our earthly mother. And I like his comparison there between showing how it extends to your thoughts. And you go and eat a heavy meal, your thoughts will completely change. As soon as you've experienced what it's like to be on a mono-fruit diet or a juice fast or water fasting, and you go back and break the fast with the wrong food, or you go back, eat fruit, some vegetables, and then go have a cooked meal, especially cooked complex meals, your mind is going to be like this. You're going to be wanting this, you're going to be wanting that, you're going to maybe be thinking things in a perverted manner, going back to old thought patterns. Dr. Morse often uses the analogy of you have insane bodily energy on fruits. You have all this physical energy, but your mind is like a lake. It's completely flat. You're the observer now. You're not being dictated by your thoughts. You're not being a little puppet to the thought stream that holds you continually forever. And yeah, I won't say any more on that. This is him talking about not eating to fullness and the gluttony that modern humans find ourselves in. I think here's a good example. We can definitely overindulge on the food here. And he says to pretty much, even an Ayurveda, don't only eat 3/4 of your plate. But he extends this, of course, to raw foods specifically, as we've shown. And when you eat, never eat until fullness. Flee the temptations of Satan. Again, Satan or negativity, things that are going against your body. Flee the temptations of Satan and listen to the voice of God's angels. For Satan and his power tempt you always to eat more and more. but live by the Spirit and resist the desires of the body. That's essentially verbatim what is up at the temple. And your fasting is always pleasing in the eyes of the angels of God. So give heed to how much you have eaten when your body is sated or satiated, and always eat less by a third. He's referred to the angels a few times. I'll be getting into what this means. The angels, he's referring to essentially the energies in nature, in the physical world. So really, the first thing is raw food. Don't eat to fullness. Eat when the sun is highest in the sky, and then to heal your body to fast and to prepare your body to fast. And I haven't put this part in here, but he shows that for every year that you have sinned against your body, 1 day of fasting will heal that. So if you're 26 years of age, you should prepare yourself for a 26-day fast. Or if you are 50 years of age, you should prepare yourself for a 50-day fast. Maybe do that in a few fasts. There's a guy called Brother Air who's part of the Mucusless Diet Healing System community. He did a 1-year water fast, and halfway through that, he did a 1-month dry fast where he did not consume water. And he said he could literally feel the vibrations of creation move through his body. I don't know anyone else that has done this before. This is also documented on a podcast. It's incredible. And the entire Mucusless Diet community, which is thousands of people, were there when he broke his fast, and they were supporting him through this. And yet medical society says we should not be able to live more than certain weeks on without water, let alone without food, without anything. And he did that for an entire year with 1 month of dry fasting. Yes?
So dry fasting, he was just eating, what was part of the fast? He doesn't eat what? He eats what and he doesn't?
Part of the fast is he was only consuming water, and then halfway through the year he did a dry fast, which was where you don't consume anything.
Oh, okay.
So he consumed nothing for a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did he lose a substantial amount of body fat?
No, he was already very lean because this guy had been living fruitarian for probably like 30 years. Yeah, he definitely, I would not be encouraging that ever. And I don't think Jesus doesn't talk about dry fasting in here. He talks about water fasting specifically. And baptism, true baptism, not what that actually means. Like, and I'll get into that. I need to be a bit quick.
When you said if you're 27, you do a 27-day fast, do you mean consecutive?
Yeah, yeah. And that's not a hard fast. I did a 21-day juice fast, which is a good way to begin. Juice fasting, you can have a lot more energy. If every day you fast, you need a day recovery. So if you're going to fast for 25 days, water, I'm talking about, you want 50 days free because you're not going to be working when you're doing that. But juice fasting, I would say you probably would still be able to do that with juice fasting. It's probably going to take maybe double the length. I'm not sure. Fruit juice specifically, fruit and herb. Yeah, grape would be the best. Grape juice. Yeah. Jesus did call it the one true vine, and it is funny. It's the only fruit we have other than berries, but specifically grapes, that can get people out of wheelchairs. It just doesn't happen on other fruits.
Just a thing of
Grapes.
blender.
Or just eat them.
Just eat them?
Yeah, or juice them. Yeah, but really you could just juice them and chew them, but eating them. Yeah. Monofruit dieting is insane.
I heard that mixing fruits is not the best things for the body.
What fruit?
In general fruits like sweet fruits, like mixing them.
Yeah.
Juice.
Well, there's certain fruits that do combine well, but ultimately mono eating or eating one thing at a time is how we should be eating. Yeah, every animal, every species on this planet eats a mono diet. You know, we're like putting things together, and it is interesting. The more things you put together, the more you want. You know, you eat a mono meal of grapes, you're very full, you're very satiated, you're not thinking about anything else. Yeah, I shall continue. So the mother's angels, this is what Jesus is referring to: the angel of air, the angel of water, the angel of sunlight, the angel of earth, and the angel of sleep. He's specifically referring to the first three: air, water, and sunlight. These are the three that you will commune with when you fast. So I'll go into the next few slides of some snippets of him saying what to do when you fast. How do I do this? What am I doing? But the angel of sleep is when he says we commune with the earth, with the Heavenly Father. So he's like, during the day, you're with your mother, essentially. And at nighttime is when you go off in your dream life and you are learning in ways that we can't comprehend through your dreams. And this is through the other force, or the star force, if you will. Yeah, but those three, air, water, and sunlight, it's also been referred to as like the nature's doctors. I think people have referred to them as well. And here he is just pointing them out here, is always there to help you, but when we turn away from them, they won't be able to serve us because we're not allowing them to serve us. So the angel of air, put off your shoes and your clothing and suffer the angel of air to embrace all your body. I just want to start with, he often uses the phrase suffer before, because these people are fasting and you will suffer before you get better. People want to feel better immediately. And a lot of people here are taking herbs and they're hitting deep detoxification right now pretty hard. I've just come out of one. That's why my eyes are like bloodshot. I've had stuff going crazy. And I've been on a deep herbal protocol and predominantly fruits for the last sort of like few weeks, but specifically this week. And you will feel everything that has been put into your body that wasn't there to serve you come out through sweat, through your breath, through your eyes, through your stools, your urine. In my world with Dr. Morse, that's what we call kidney filtration. That's why if you want a tumor to dissolve, you have to see sediment in your urine. These are the physical realities of what's happening through putting in different chemistry into your body and, of course, breathing air. So suffer the angel of air to embrace all your body, then breathe long and deeply, that the angel of air may be brought within you. I tell you truly, the angel of air shall cast out of your body all uncleannesses which defiled it without and within, and thus shall all evil smelling and unclean things rise out of you. Has anyone been around someone when they've been doing a fast or a detox and they can start to smell pretty bad, especially their breath? Yeah, this is essentially that happening. Angel of water. Put off your shoes and your clothing and suffer the angel of water to embrace all your body. Cast yourselves wholly into his enfolding arms, and as often as you move the air with your breath, move with your body the water also. So he actually refers to the earthly mother has sons, is the sort of way he's pictorializing this for the people he's teaching. And that is that the sons are these angels, and these sons are here to serve. There's also the earthly mother's daughters, which I'm not going to get into, but they have a different role. But yeah, he talks about these being the roles of healing the physical body. So I just wanted to verify that because it does say into his enfolding arms. And as often as you move the air with your breath, move with your body the water also. Think not that it is sufficient that the angel of water embrace you outwards only. I tell you truly, the uncleannesses within is greater by much than the uncleannesses without. And he who cleanses himself without, but within remains unclean, is like to tombs that outwards are painted fair, but are within full of all manner of horrible uncleannesses and abominations. So that part is omitted from the Bible and from a lot of scriptures and other cultures' writings that talk about baptism or using water to be born again. And that part, he's actually inferring a water enema. He actually has an instruction of how to do that. Get a water gourd with a reed and pretty much says every day as you fast to flush your colon with fresh spring water until the water that comes out of you as clean, he says, as clean as the stream's foam sporting in the sunlight. Which is just, would have been the guy at that time, he must have been cracking up reading that. I don't know how that would have originally translated, but sporting in the sunlight, look how cool I am, look how... and he says to watch everything that comes out of you. You will smell the stuff come out of you. You will physically see the stuff come out of you that is defiling your body, that is making your bowels a complete mess, and that you shouldn't stink. There's an amazing account of this guy on YouTube who shows cities that didn't have waste systems. And this is before our time of modern humans, of what we understand of how cities were made, and that if they were raw foodists, there'll be no need for waste systems because all that waste would be put back to the earth. So you would need no sewer pipes. You would need no waste disposal systems like we have in cities. But we have to have those because people eat junk. So like that has to exist. That food, we know with like using farming, you can't use people that eat meat and processed junk. Their fecal matter will not give life to grown food. But if you get a bare minimum someone that eats plants, even cooked plants, that will just be enough to grow food. And if you're a raw foodist, that's going to be like steroids for plants. And it's interesting that there are accounts of these cities that didn't have waste systems, showing perhaps that they were people, groups that lived on living food. Angel of sunlight. Put off your shoes and your clothing and suffer the angel of sunlight to embrace all your body. Then breathe long and deeply that the angel of sunlight may be brought within you. I didn't put the rest in because it went into a lot of detail, but he's saying that anything within you, the sun will pull out through your skin in crusts and scabs and boils. And it's interesting nowadays, people go in the sun, and often those that haven't been in colder climates, they often come to Australia and they start getting outbreaks, or they start getting skin things happening then when they go in the sun. I got a reaction to the sun. The sun is helping you pull waste out of your skin. It's assisting your body to heal. And it is very interesting that in our day and age, if you go to a skin cancer clinic, they will cut the waste on the skin and be like, oh yeah, there's dead cells in there, or cancer cells or something, which is just their fancy way of saying dead cells, and oh, yep, and we're going to treat you for that. Not understanding that your body, your skin is the largest eliminative organ, and the sun is assisting you to get it out of the skin. And this is, again, Jesus pointing to that. The angel of earth, sink your feet into the mire, that's like mud, that the embrace of the angel of earth may draw out from your bones all uncleannesses and all disease. And the knots of your bones will vanish away, and they will be straightened, and all your pains will disappear. When you put all this into a picture, just imagine one of these people in nature by themselves. They're going for a swim, they're lying in the sun, they got their feet in the mud, they're just there in nature. That's essentially what he's instructing people to do in very simple terms. Just go into nature, put your feet on the ground, get your feet in the dirt, don't wear your clothes, don't wear your shoes, go alone. He does say don't let others see you fast, because it's a time of great internal growth on your own. This is something each individual has to go through on their own. And when you put it together in that way, you see, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense, that the best place to fast is in nature. It's not going to be inside. It's not going to be binge watching a TV show, though that may be what we want to do when we have no energy. And then the angel of sleep. And labor all day long with the angels of the earthly mother, that you may come to know them and their works even more and more well. But when the sun is set and your heavenly Father sends you his most precious angel, sleep, then take your rest and be all the night with the angel of sleep. And this is where Jesus expands on saying, don't be up all night and drinking and partying and living days in idleness and slothfulness. There's actually an amazing movie called Mary Magdalene, which came out in 2016. And it was one of the best accounts of an amazing thing that Jesus said. And he said, here you are, here, seeing me talk. And you go to your church, you go to your sacred place, and you sing a song, you say a prayer. But then you go back and live days as you want. You go back to do what pleases you, what suits you, and what makes the days upon the earth pass easily for you. And that essentially is just doing cushy, comfortable things, and not realizing that in certain hardships there is great reward and contentment that most people don't actually feel. We're mostly living it from a place of excitement versus true contentment, which this is, to me, screaming about pure contentment and not moment by moment sensory desire and lust and so on. So books on the Essenes, there's obviously the Essene Gospel of Peace. I don't know why I didn't put that on there, because that's what I've just been talking about. But The Secret Life of Jesus the Essene, that's an amazing one. The Dead Sea Scrolls and the Life of the Original Christians. These are both by Raymond Bernard, all three of them actually. And the third one is an account of Appolonius of Tyan, who was a student of Pythagoras. This is where it looks like that Pythagoras may have been the founder of the Essene communities. He was a fruitarian. And supposedly he started this community. This community is still around. They're very secret though, as far as I understand. There's actually an amazing fruitarian place in the south of Spain called the Essene Fruitarian Community, I believe. They don't take volunteers anymore, but that is an amazing place. They're on Instagram. They share all the food they grow, how they live, and the main guy's got a video on YouTube when he's doing a 7-day water fast, and he's literally he's there with his camera and he's set it up and he's just chilling, and there's like mice sitting on his hands, butterflies just on his arms, birds coming and landing on him. And anyone that has done extensive fasting, not that I've gone down crazy water fasting experiences, but they say nature just starts coming to you, the donkeys and cows, and they'll just start coming to you. They'll come and hang out with you. It's almost like they sense that shift in your energy by you going without. Since all these animals will be doing the same very, very frequently. Yeah, that's about it. I've got 20 minutes of Q&A if you guys want to further the discussion, but I encourage you to definitely the Essene Gospel of Peace Book 1 there's PDFs, 2 PDFs online. If you just type in the Essene Gospel of Peace PDF, it'll be there, so you don't have to pay for it. And there's of course all 4 books. The first one I just love rereading. Every time I read it, it just reminds you of what you know you need to be doing that you sort of fail to do more often than you would like. But right now is the best time. Grape season's about to begin. I'll be jumping on the grapes once that gets really cheap. I want to be doing at least a month, hopefully 3. And when it comes to like the quality of the fruit, what is so fascinating is, Dr. Morse has said, isn't it astounding that you can have a grape that's been modified, had its seed removed, been sprayed, you then get it and then put on the shelf, you then get it, you wash it, get all the crap off it, and then you eat that, and that will still dissolve a tumor. That will still regenerate nerve. That will still, get you to get out of a wheelchair. This is incredible. Like, it just makes you wonder what the original grape would have been like. What vine ripe, straight from nature in vineyards. Imagine if the vineyards in Australia weren't used for wine. Isn't it? It's also funny that we have all these people talking about wine, and I see paintings in Egypt, and I'm like, where is this pointing anything towards them being alcoholics? There's plates of grapes and what looks like grape juice. Why have we drawn the conclusion they're just there drinking wine? It looks to me like a celebration of grapes. And anyone that researches in German history, the grapes have been celebrated for eons. It's known as the Queen of Fruits in Germany. There was an old king in Germany that would get his sick patients, people in the town, to live at the vineyards and just eat grapes all day. And that's accounted for in a book called The Grape Cure, where Johanna Brandt shows how powerful the grape is. But anyway, I'll finish it there. Thank you so much for coming and getting on this. It's good. Thank you.